When you are asking me if I do regret some undertakings of the Eurogroup under my presidency, one of the things I regret is that I was unable to join this artificially separated two parts of Europe. I think that I did more to explain the problems of countries of South Europe in the north than I was explaining the problems of the north when I was in the south. I'm seen in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Finland, in Austria as an ally of the countries of the south, and I'm unhappy that in the south very often I'm seen as the stupid, stubborn representative of austerity policies like they have been put in place in the northern part of Europe. I'm not a fan of austerity. I don't like austerity. I don't like the excesses of austerity, but these very often are the decisions of governments in the south and not so much decisions of which would have been imposed to the south. But the countries of the south know that they have to reduce their deficits. They know that they have to lower the levels of public debt. They know that there is no sustainable growth without sustainable public finances in a perspective. There is a growing understanding that we need both fiscal consolidation and growth-oriented policy. That's exactly what they did in recent years, although representatives of the northern part of Europe were too much insisting on the fiscal side of the problems we had to resolve. But countries like Ireland, which is not really a country of the south, Portugal, Spain, managed it to step away from the programs which they had negotiated with the so-called lenders. And Italy, by the way, is not the problem in Europe. I'm very often surprised when in Italy observers, politicians, journalists are given the impression that Italy would be of a particular problem to Europe. Italy, according to what the Prime Minister said in recent days, is willing to respect the criteria of the Stability Pact. Italy knows if Italy had an inside look in depth to the Stability Pact, that the Stability Pact, as it was amended under my chairmanship in 2005, is taking into account the economic cycle, is taking into account other relevant factors than only those which were part of the Stability Pact during a decade before. Once Romano Prodi said that the Stability Pact was stupid, or it has become reasonable, and I don't think that we should insist, as we were doing, and that was a major mistake, so much on austerity. It's about fiscal rigor. It's not about austerity.
Only a slice of votes could separate you and your competitor Martin Schulz. In Italy we just have the so-called larghe intese. In Europe, would you consider a kind of grosse koalition, a kind of appel à la République as Chirac did towards Le Pen Senior? We have Le Pen Junior right now.
Mr. Schulz, who in my private life is my friend, is not my enemy. He's my competitor. And I never felt that it would be useful to hide away the common views you can have. Why should we invent differences where there are no differences? But where there are differences, we have to address them. It's mainly about fiscal consolidation and in combination with growth-oriented policies. But what we have in common, strongly in common, solemnly in common, is that we want to fight against populists and against right-wing parties. I'm allergic against parties advocating openly racism, anti-Semitism, refusing those who are coming from abroad. I was Prime Minister in a country for 19 years, which does have an immigration rate of 40%. I grew up with Italian children in the industrial part of Luxembourg, mainly dealing with steel industry and so on. I would not be the one I am without this, how could I say, this imported Italian influence, which played a major role in my life since I grew up with Italians, since I was the neighbor of Italian immigrants coming from the north of Italy, working in the construction sector, the steel sector. I'm admiring the particular genius of these people and of this nation, which very often leads me to say, when I'm not speaking to Italians, that I can't be objective when it comes to Italy, although I will have to be objective when it comes to Italy. The European Union would not be complete without Italy, and I experienced in my young life the problems of those who were immigrants or emigrants in the Italian.
We'll come to this theme later. I just wanted to ask you one thing. I know you love Italy. You were just having lunch with the young Italians, I mean from Forza Italia, I suppose.
Not only from Forza.
Not only from Forza Italia, okay. But you said with Schulz I could dialogue, we have something common or something not, but the real enemy are populists or Euroscepticals. But someone says Euroscepticals and populists seem to be by your side sometimes. Did you receive Berlusconi's excuses for that statement about Angela Merkel and German people?
I have noted that after my reaction and the reaction of other leading figures of the EPP, that he was stepping away from the excessive part of his comments on Germany in relation with Italy. I don't think that it is a good idea to play off one country against the other. Europe is something more than an addition, taking into account differences.
But sometimes does he embarrass you? Does Berlusconi's statements embarrass you somehow?
The European continent is a complicated one. The European Union is a very complicated body, and the European People's Party is not less complicated than the continent and the European Union are. As in the Socialist Party family, we have from time to time different views on different issues, but I'm insisting on the fact that we have a EPP party program and everyone has to stick to that program. I'm not responsible for the deviations, explanations are sometimes producing. I'm a strong believer in European diversity, but diversity without unity leads us to a collapse.
Okay, you were underlining the importance of states doing their part for economic budgets, and you are a sustainer of paying each one's debts as a state. Berlusconi is being condemned because he didn't pay taxes and he governed Italy for 2 decades. Does this thing embarrass you or not?
Of course this thing is embarrassing me, but I don't want to interfere in the judiciary power like it is organized in Italy, and it is organized in Italy in the same way it's normally organized in democracies. I am embarrassed because he's a member of my party. As socialists, I'm embarrassed by judgments hitting their own representatives, mainly in the central part of Europe. So we have, and the socialists and ourselves, we have to bear the same weight. I'm not withdrawing my respect for the performances Silvio Berlusconi was able to deliver, but I'm taking notice of the fact that he has been condemned by a an Italian tribunal.
So it's a judicial problem, but if there was Berlusconi's name on your European list, this would be a political problem too, wouldn't it?
I'm not responsible for the listing of candidates the various EPP parties in Italy are presenting, but Mr. Berlusconi is not on the list, so this is a purely theoretical question.
Her daughter could be. Have you any? Her daughter could be, or in the future, Marina Berlusconi could be on the list. Do you have an opinion on this?
Listen, I'm never asked in the Netherlands, nor in Poland, nor in Slovenia or Latvia, if yes or no, I would be in favor of the candidature of the daughter of a former political leader. Why do you ask me this question in Italy? Is Italy a
Because
different country from the others?
well, she's the daughter, but she could be the future candidate of EPP in Italy, so it was also a political matter. But let's not talk about embarrassing things right now.
Not as embarrassing as you think, but I'm never asked questions of that nature in other countries.
Okay, so we can talk about immigration, the last question. The immigration and refugees issue, Renzi talked about this today, but also your political partner Alfano did. He said Lampedusa is a European frontier, Europe has to make something. So at the European level, in 2 words as you can, how would you take charge of this Europe? Would you give more money to Italy just to finance the problem? Would you integrate immigrants?
Illegal immigration and the wave of asylum seekers and refugees is a European problem. It's not a regional or a local or a national problem. Refugees, asylum seekers coming from Africa, they are arriving in Italy, mainly in Lampedusa for the reasons we know. But it's Europe. They want to go to Europe. They don't want to go to Lampedusa. And so it's a matter of common concern for the whole of Europe to give an answer to this dramatic question. This question is a dramatic one for those who are taking their boats and who are drawing in the Mediterranean. And it's a dramatic question for the countries these people are arriving. And I was always of the opinion, I said it during my time in office as Prime Minister, that countries of the North, less concerned by the massive arrival of refugees and asylum seekers, they have to take their part when it comes to the responsibility all of us we have, and this has to have financial consequences, because we have to finance in common and together the costs either of taking care of those who are arriving or taking our, if I can say so, northern part in the cost of the return program. It's not correct, it's not acceptable that the countries most hit by illegal immigration, by refugees waves and by asylum seekers arrivals are left alone, are isolated when it comes to this phenomena. I'm for a stronger inner EU solidarity with those countries being hit by this kind of phenomena. And I don't like the expression being hit, because not one single person is illegal. Not one single person is illegal, but we have to deal with the consequences of the fact that we are not taking care of the resolution of the problems where they exist. The problems leading people to leave their country do exist where they are living, and it's unacceptable that a growing number of European governments are lowering their aid development budget instead of increasing it. When I left my office after having won the elections in Luxembourg, the aid development proportion of Luxembourg was 1% of our national GDP. If all European countries would put in place a policy, and if all the G7 countries, giving lessons to the entire world, would put in place an aid development budget of 1% of their national welfare, we would have less refugees and less asylum seekers. But as they do it, and as we do have to face that problem, we need by far more solidarity inside Europe than we have for the time being.
Okay, I'm really great.